Hey, welcome back. So we are now going to do another exercise where we uh, take one of the projects or exercises that we completed in Excel using Visual Basic and recreate it in Google Sheets, just again to kind of contrast how you would do things in Google Sheets versus Visual Basic and Excel. And this particular exercise, I've got the Excel version loaded up. This is something that we did in one of the earlier videos. And to review, there's a set of values here, concentrations versus length in this big long table. And they go down for a long ways, they're 0, and then they become non-zero, and they go back to 0, and then non-zero again. And it goes all the way down to row 790. And when you click on this button, it runs some code that we wrote, and it searches through this list, and it finds the first row where the concentration is 0, which is right down here, and it writes that to these two cells, the length and the concentration. It finds it also starts at the bottom and goes backwards until you get to right here 1950, and it writes that to the last. So that's the last non-zero concentration in the list. And then it also searches through the entire list and finds the maximum concentration and the row where it occurs, and the length, the corresponding length where that occurs. And so here's our code, just to briefly review it. Find the location with the first non-zero concentration. Found equals false, row equals 5, do while not found, and row is less than or equal to 790. If cells row, comma 3 is not equal to 0, then found equals true, else row equals row plus 1. If found, then range E9 equals else. Anyway, so it's just looking till it finds one, then it skips out of the loop. And this does the same thing, but it goes backwards, starts at row 790 and goes backwards, and then we've got a loop that finds the max concentration and the row that it occurs. And it does that by searching the entire list. And if we start out by saying, well, the biggest one, the max, is the first one in the list, and the row is 5. And as we're looking through, if we find a value that's bigger than the max, and we set that equal to the new max and keep track of what row it occurs on, and then at the end we just write that to this particular cell. And I kind of hurried through that, but you know, hopefully you've done this before. And you could go back and review that solution if you like. But I just want to show you how to do that in Visual Basic, and also, or excuse me, in Google Apps Script. And I'm going to show you a couple other little tricks with Google Apps Script as well. So let's go back here. So what I have here is I took that same Excel spreadsheet or worksheet, and I uploaded it to Google Drive. And then I right-clicked on it and I said open as Google Sheet, and so it copies it in. Again, all the formatting is intact. I recreated the chart here, or I created a chart here showing these concentrations versus length. And then so we want to write a loop, a set of loops that do this, and I have some code to do that right here. It's actually going to do all 3 in one loop. So we're going to go back here and we're going to say, go to the script editor. And we're going to copy that right here. So let's see, let me try, there we go. And again, we get all the funky extra spaces in the code. And so let's look through this. Basically, what we need to do is loop through a bunch of cells. Now, one difference between Google Sheets and Excel is you can loop through the cells using a for loop or a do loop in Excel very quickly, and it works fine. But the process of accessing an individual cell in Google Apps Script is really slow. So the suggested approach by Google is that you copy everything into a 2D array. So that's what this line of code does. It copies everything in B5 to C790 into this two-dimensional array called values, where the first index is a row and the second index is a column. Then you loop through that array. So we have a for loop now for I equals 0, I less than values.length. So that means it's going to go from 0 to values.length. And by the way, all arrays in Google Apps Script are indexed at 0. So we have to be careful there. So we say if values I 1, so 1 is basically the second column. The columns are 0 and 1. So it's looking in the second column and it says, so it's basically checking to see if the concentration is not equal to 0. And if so, it says sheet get range e9.set values. So basically it takes the corresponding length and writes that to E9, the corresponding concentration, and writes that to F9. And then break, that break is how you exit a for loop. So this kicks you out of the loop because you're done. And then the same thing down here. Let me clean that up just a bit. So now what it's doing, find the last non-zero concentration. So it starts at the end of the list and goes backwards. I minus minus is the same thing as I equals I minus 1. So up here I plus plus is equivalent to saying I equals I plus 1. And that's how you write a for loop in JavaScript or Google Apps Script. And so this does the same thing. It just goes backwards until it finds a non-zero concentration and writes that to E11 and F11. And then finally this code down here uses the same logic we used in Excel Visual Basic to find the max concentration. And when it does, it writes it to cells E10 and F10. So let's save that. We're going to call this my project, and we can run that. Use this right here. And the first time we run this, we got to do the whole permissions thing. What we did before. Go to my project and allow. So we turn on all the permissions, and now it's running the function, and there it is. There's the same sets of concentrations. So it worked beautifully. But what I want to do now is show you a couple of other things that are kind of fun. So, you know, since this isn't a macro recorded, it's an actual sub in the script editor, we have to go here and click the run button. Another way to do that is you can actually add a custom menu command. And the way you do that is there's some code up here. I'm going to copy this code right here. And then we are going to go back here and say tools. No, let's see. We're going to go right here. And we're going to go to the very top of this code. And this is an on open. So this is like trapping on the open event in Excel Visual Basic. But basically it says when you open this this Google Sheet, it grabs the user interface object, and then it creates a menu called My Scripts. It gives the menu name as Find Concentrations, and then it gives it the name of this function down here, and it adds it to the interface. So this should add this, it should add a menu command that calls this particular function. And so let's try that. To initiate that, we have to close it and then go back here, and I've stored it right here. And it takes a second. It's working. And then eventually, there you go, my scripts, find concentration. So let's delete those values, and now we can say my scripts, find concentrations. And oops, looks like we need to, for some reason, do the authorization again. That's strange. Okay, I'll go ahead and do that. And now, there we are. Works like a charm. And the next time we go to run this, it should work without having to do all the authorizations. Now, there's one other way to make your code work. Remember, in Visual Basic and Excel, we have ActiveX Controls that we can use to link to run our code and our macros. You can do the same kind of thing here. And if you go up here and do Insert Drawing, and we're going to, it brings up the drawing tool. We're going to input a rounded rectangle, and we're going to type find concentrations. Expand that a little bit. Here we go. And maybe reduce the font size a little bit. That's pretty big. About like this. There we go. All right. Save and close. And we can now reposition that how we want. Now also you'll notice there's this little dot here on the side. We can say assign script, and we say find underscore con. We give it the name of our script, our function, and now we should be good to go. If I delete that and click that button, boom, it runs the script. So again, you write your function, your code, your script, and then you create a drawing object, and then there's a way to click on a drawing object and assign what the name of the script, and away you go. So we wrote, let's see, let's go back to the script editor here. So we put in our code for find concentration, and then we also added this little onOpen function that made this menu command. It'll put that in every time you open this sheet. You can run it that way, or you can run it using this button. So again, that's a very quick overview of some of the capabilities of Google Apps Script in Google Sheets. And you can really do some very powerful things. And so if you're comfortable with Visual Basic and Excel, I encourage you to dive in and take a shot at using Google Apps Scripts and Google Sheets.